Alright, hi, I'm Evan with iZotope. We are going to be checking out the latest version of our mastering suite, which is Ozone 7. Now we've added in a number of new tools, both to the standard version and to the advanced version. Right now what I'm running is the advanced version, but it'll look exactly the same in standard. So right now you'll notice that we are running a standalone application. Ozone 6 was the first time that we actually enabled it. You can actually use it as a standalone. Previously, you can only instantiate it in a DAW as a plugin. However, it still functions as a plugin within Pro Tools, Ableton Live, Logic, etc. But right now I'm in the standalone. So let's say that we have an entire album that we're going to master now. I can jump into Finder, select the tracks that we need to, drag them into the standalone application, and at this point it's going to import them into my project, and they're going to appear as tabs up along the top. If they're at different sample rates, it'll resample them as need be. And now we'll have our entire album to master. Now, along the bottom here, we'll have the individual modules that you can add, as Ozone 7 has. We tried to incorporate every possible module you could need to take your mix to an actual master. So if I click to insert module, you'll see we have a number of new modules here, and let's take a little quick look through them here. So first, we have our new Vintage EQ. Now this is a brand new module here, and you'll notice that all of our new Vintage modules have a certain look to them. They look a little bit different with the kind of UI. But this is, again, a Pultec style EQ with mid-side functionality. So it's the same kind of tricks that you're used to with a Pultec EQ to remove a bit of mud by boosting and cutting the low end at the same time. Except, unlike most Pultec style EQs, we're actually showing, if you look up at the top here, what's actually happening to the frequency range. So you're actually getting a view of what this is doing to your audio in terms of coloration. So this is a track by a band called Dan and the Wildfire. We'll just take a quick pass at mastering this now with some different modules that we have here. So to start off with, I'm going to add a little bit of our dynamic EQ here, and this is to add a little bit of warmth down in the kind of lower mids. And because it's dynamic, it's going to adapt to the incoming audio signal, so you'll notice that this line is kind of moving up and down, so that's adapting to the incoming audio signal and boosting only when the boost is needed. As soon as there's a lot of frequency information in that range, it's going to stop boosting. So at this point, we could go into our Vintage EQ, add a little bit of air to the sides by increasing the high end. So we'll boost around 16K or so in the sides, tighten up the Q a little bit, and maybe add a little bit of body with a low-end boost, and simultaneously a complementary cut to remove a little bit of mud there. Now in some of our other new modules, along the lines of adding a little bit more body, a little bit more warmth to it, one of our new modules is our Vintage Tape module. Now this is basically our emulation of a master tape console. However, we're taking this from a more unique stance in that we want to only incorporate the good parts of tape. We don't want hiss, we don't want wow, we don't want flutter. So now this is imparting the phase characteristics and the saturation of tape. So we can drive the input a little bit to add a little bit more warmth. Maybe add in some even harmonics. We darken things up a little bit with a positive bias. Now at this point, I'm pretty pleased with that, so we'll jump into our Vintage Compressor. And this is a brand new module, and our DSP engineer likes to describe this as a heartfelt emulation of a compressor that's never existed. So we'll pull this down just to get a little bit of leveling going on. And you'll notice that this is, so it's dependent on the incoming audio signal. So attack and release times, going to adapt a bit, it is program dependent. And we can adjust as need be with our sidechain filter up at the top here. So it's reacting more to vocals or the kick drum or whatnot. Now at this point I'm pretty pleased with this. So we have a couple of different ways we could go about the actual maximization stage here. First, we have our brand new Vintage limiter, and this is a limiter that's inspired by the famous Fairchild 670. We have a few different modes here. Typically my go-to for this kind of music would be our modern mode, and I'm just going to turn this down so I don't deafen everyone. So you know, it's very lively, it's kind of bouncy a bit. Now the other option we have here is one of our newest tools as well, which is our brand new IRC4 mode in our maximizer. Now, for anyone who's familiar with the Ozone limiter, it is known for being very transparent. You can get things really loud without distorting. IRC4 takes it to a new stage. So what it utilizes is spectral filtering, spectral shaping beforehand. So if you have like a huge hip-hop track with a huge kick, boomy low end, as soon as that hits the limiter, you're probably getting a little bit of pumping, a little bit of distortion in the vocals. This is going to curve off and just kind of lighten up on the low end a little bit, so that way it's going to tame that so it's not causing things like the vocals to distort. And as such, you can get things quite loud. So, instead of switch this to my favorite mode, which is transient, let's say we're mastering this for SoundCloud, so maybe we'll leave like a dB of ceiling, and we'll see what we can do here. So you'll notice we're getting around 5 dB of gain reduction here, and it's really smooth sounding. Getting around -5 RMS, which is way hotter than I would recommend mastering something like this, but that's possible. And the last thing I would like to show is, so I mentioned, like, let's say we were going to be mastering this for SoundCloud. One of the new functions with Ozone 7 Advanced is our codec preview function. So if I click down here, this is now going to be processing this audio so that way we're listening to it as it's going to be compressed. So for SoundCloud, that's going to be an MP3 at 128 kilobits per second. Now what I'm listening to is that compressed file. The idea being that now I can go in and make any adjustments needed. So if we notice that oftentimes with a 128 kilobits per second MP3, we're probably going to need a bit of a lower ceiling, maybe -1.5 dB, because otherwise you are going to be clipping after conversion. This allows you to double check that and see how it's going. And another thing you'll often find is that you're losing a little bit of high end. So maybe you want to do a little bit of a high end boost, maybe narrow the high end a little bit. So this will enable you to actually preview this. And just as a fun tip here, these are actually the artifacts. This is the difference between the compressed file and the non-compressed file. So at this point, if I've gone through, mastered all these tracks, and we're pretty much set, we can head up to export audio files, and we can export either just the individual single track itself or all of these tracks. And one of the new features that we've added in here is that in addition to WAV and AIF, you can also export this as an MP3 or an AAC file. And that is a quick look at the new Ozone 7. Thank you.